Good afternoon, everyone. We are here finally back again today after being gone for I think it's been 3 weeks now. Joy and I had to go to Kingston to our other home for about 10 days, or maybe it's longer than that, I don't know, but we missed 2 Sundays because of that. And then we came back to Tulsa here, and then Joy got something wrong with her when she stepped out into the garage and she twisted her hip and she ended up almost in the hospital because of the pain. And so she didn't feel like doing Shine last week. So we're finally here today, but today I have a special guest with me today. This is my brother-in-law, Jonathan Wakefield, and he is a reverend, used to be a pastor of a church here in Tulsa. Actually, you were pastor of several churches here in Tulsa, weren't you?
2.
Yeah, 2, okay. I don't know much about his history except for that, but anyway, he's well versed in the Bible, much more than I am. But anyway, he will be with us today to further explain this parable we're talking about today, which is actually the parable of the tower, and it's in Luke chapter 14, verses 28 through 33 today. And it talks about building a tower, basically, and I'll explain that in a few minutes here when we get into that. But I'm reading out the King James Version like I always do. Jonathan's reading out the English Standard Bible.
Yes.
And which I'm not that familiar with, but anyway, it gives you a different insight into what we're going to study today. So I will start reading, and then we'll go from there. Verse 28, "For which of you, intending to build a tower, sitteth not down first, and counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it? Lest haply, after he hath laid the foundation, and is not able to finish it, all that behold it began to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king, going to make war against another king, sitteth not down first, and consulteth whether he be able with 10,000 to meet him that cometh against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is yet a great way off, he sendeth an ambassador, or it says here, ambassage. Never heard of that word before, A-M-B-A-S-S-A-G-E, and desireth conditions of peace." I guess he sent an ambassador and desireth conditions of peace. Verse 33, it says, "So likewise, whosoever he be of you that forsaketh not all that he hath, he cannot be my disciple." Now, John is going to read from his Bible now, the same scripture.
Okay, beginning with verse 28.
28 through 33, yeah.
"For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going to encounter another king in war will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore any of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple."
So that sounds very much like what I just read out of King James Bible.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is. But that's fine. Anyway, this reminds me of, I don't know a ton about your history or anything, but it reminds me of you and Janice.
Mm-hmm.
Janice happens to be Jonathan's wife, and it's Joy's sister is actually Janice. But it reminds me of what you have done and how the sacrifices you've made to be a disciple of Christ. And I know from just listening to stories of what you did in Africa and so forth. Jonathan's dad was a missionary to Africa, so he spent many a year of his younger life in Africa, which to me is a sacrifice in itself, just being in Africa, you know. But anyway, you spent a few years there, right?
Yes, I grew up in West Africa
Okay.
from the age of 2,
Okay.
from age 2 to about 19.
Okay. But anyway, this reminded me of you and how you have to anything you do when you're going to build something like it says here, you need to sit down and really, first thing you do is pray for wisdom in what you're getting ready to do to make sure that the Lord is in agreement with you on that situation. And you got to count the cost like it says here, otherwise you'll end up being the mockery of your peers, you know, if things don't go right and so forth, or you get stuck over in Africa and you don't have any money and everything just goes to, you know, pot there.
Right.
So it can be a bad situation, but Jesus expects this of his followers, and if you want to be his disciples, you're going to have to sit down and, like I said, pray for wisdom first, because that's the first thing that the Lord tells you to do in the Word, is to pray for wisdom first, so that you can do the things that he would have you to do. So I'm going to ask Jonathan here to kind of expound a little bit on his past and how he has actually done the things that he's talking about here, and the repercussions of the types of things that it talks about here also if you don't prepare to do it. So if you want to expound a little bit on that,
Okay.
just your history and so forth.
My journey has been, my parents were missionaries. We lived in 3 countries in West Africa from age 2 to about 19. And what I found out in my journey after that was that preparation is necessary in preparation for ministry and life. And I had several experiences that prepared me for what happened in my life. First of all, when I was 2 years old, my mom and dad and sisters, we crossed the Atlantic on a freighter. We left New Orleans, and it took us 6 weeks to get to Lagos, Nigeria, which is West Africa. Lagos is a port city, a large city in Nigeria. 6 weeks. And so the experience beginning during that time, what I learned later was that my parents had prepared themselves. My mother was from Wisconsin, my dad from Oklahoma. My mother, when she was a little girl, just a child, my grandmother, Hulda Dell, was putting her shoes on. And the Lord spoke to my grandmother and said, "These feet will walk in Africa." Now, my mother never knew that until when she went to Africa. My grandmother told her. But my mother went through an experience where she went to Bible school, Springfield, Missouri, and trained for the ministry. And she had a vision in this calling where she saw her 2 sisters and her brother and her mother, because her father had passed at a young age. And each one of them, when they came up, my mother had to say to the Lord, "I release them. I'm gonna go. I have to let go of my being at home and with my family. I'm gonna go to Africa. That's your calling." And each one of them came up before her face. So her sisters, her brother, and her mother. Then, arriving in Africa, or before we went to Africa, of course, my dad, he had a vision of the Africans beckoning him to come. So all those things prepared him for his journey. I am convinced that in life's journey, God will prepare us. And I've often said to people when I was pastoring, look at your past, look at your personality, look at your giftings, your journey, and see what in that journey prepared you to be what you are today. All of those things are important. Some people are gifted with, some people are gifted with a number of things. Mechanics. Some people are gifted with teaching. Some people are gifted with business and making money. Some people are gifted with ministry. And all of those factors are in there in our upbringing. So we go with what God has called us to do, and also with who He has made us to be, our giftings. See, so that was part of my early journey. I left Africa by myself. My dad had arranged for me to go to a Bible school in Texas. So I went there, but on the way, I was not called into ministry at that time, but I had been involved with ministry in Africa. With my sister, we'd go out on Sunday afternoon and preach. In Dakar, Senegal, one of the places we lived, I'd go into the neighborhood there, and the boys, like the Pied Piper, would follow me. I had up to 100 boys would follow me. We would end up at the church, and I taught them Sunday school. So that was part of my journey. But then, when I came back to the United States, I was going to Bible school, and just probably a month before I went, I was by myself, and the Lord spoke to me and called me into the ministry. But I had that preparation, see. And so then I knew I was going into the ministry, not only going to Bible school and all that, but I was going into ministry myself. So I'm just going to shorten it here as much as possible. And I went to this Bible school for 2.5 years, graduated with a junior college diploma. And I went back the second semester of my junior year to unload my things off the trailer in Waxahachie, Texas. I drove from Oklahoma City to Waxahachie, unloaded my things in the room, and I think I have written that I actually went through the enrollment line. But then the Lord spoke to me. I was by myself again and said, go to Oral Roberts University. So I didn't know what to do. All my friends were at Southwestern. They were from the movement fellowship I was from. I've been very involved in the college. And so I called my dad, and he said, go. So I packed all the things in the room and left. I didn't even tell anybody. I just left. I went to ORU, unloaded, and enrolled there. And what's significant there is that I was exposed to the charismatic movement and to a different mindset, in ministry. And I graduated from ORU. So that prepared me. Later I started Christian Chapel. Janice and I started that church and pastored for a number of years. And then later I traveled for 5 years, and then I started Harvest Church for a number of years there. So all that prepared me for being in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Right. Well, that's what it's talking about here.
Yeah.
Is getting wisdom first. You got to, all the things that you did, of course you had a lot of influence from the Lord Himself because of all the things that happened with your family and so on and so forth. And so that gave you at least some insight into what you're going to get yourself into, basically, because your dad was over in Africa, so you knew about all that.
I watched him start.
It's not an easy life.
Dozens of churches, you know.
Yeah, see, there you go.
And sacrifice, and we lived in 3 villages, and then we lived in 2 capital cities during that time.
Yeah, but you knew what you were getting into.
I did.
You went back over there, whatever. Yeah, that's what it's talking about here.
I encourage students, college or Bible school students, when I have a chance, that they need to have proper training biblically, and also if they're going to go to the mission field, that they need to go where someone already has been, if possible. Go there so they can learn the ropes from the veteran missionaries out there, when I was in France, later, a couple of years in French-speaking country, where I grew up, most of the places were French-speaking, so I learned that language. And the French Assemblies of God churches would require a person, a young man, or someone going into the ministry to work with him in the church first, see, and to learn how that thing to be prepared, and then to go into a senior pastor relationship. Okay.
Yeah.
Was that what you asked me about?
Yeah.
That's what.
Well, you,
Yeah.
you have to. You have
I've got so many stories.
I know, but it doesn't matter what you prepare yourself for, whether it's ministry or whatever. Here it's talking about ministry and so forth. But
Yes.
when you go into business
It's
for
the same
yourself,
thing.
it's the same thing. You better get prepared for the good and the bad, you know, because it's going to happen. And so if you're not prepared, it can be a devastating situation.
It can be, and you know the thing about that I learned from my parents and growing up and all this is that you have to stay with it, persevere, and you stay with it. You know, you don't just quit. You learn, experience. Now my life has been in the ministry, but I've learned that God will make a way. Let me tell you one story.
Okay.
One story here.
Okay.
I was by myself before Janice and I were married. I was in France. I spent the summer there, and I ministered to the Russian gypsies. It was the main group of people of the full gospel in France at that time. So the missionary that I was staying with, I stayed in his attic. He sent me to the gypsy national camp to speak to the teenagers. So here I got on the train. I went out to eastern France, and when I got off, there was only one Frenchman who got off with me, and we walked into the train station. There wasn't anybody there. I don't remember anybody working there or anybody in the train station. So we walked through the building, walked out the other side, and we walked on a dirt road, and we were just walking. And we walked, I don't know how long we were walking, and then we came to a fork in the road, a Y. And I said to him in French, I don't know which way to go. I'm going to the gypsy camp. I don't know which way to go. And he said to me, you go to the left, because one to this left and one to the right. And I went to the left, and he went to the right. I never saw him again. I don't know his name, to remember his name. But after a while, walking down that dirt road in the evening, it was getting dark, I heard the music, see?
Oh, okay.
But so what it is, here's the story, punchline.
Okay.
When you don't know which way to go, God will send somebody to help you.
Yeah.
Well, you want me to tell that story?
Is there another story?
There's a story. Janice is sitting over here.
Just
My
say-
parents got married. They were pastoring here in the United States for a while. And my mother and dad planned to go to Africa, of course. And so she got a message from her roommate from Bible school who had gone to Nigeria, single woman, had died of black water fever. So she said to the Lord, how can I take these children, ages 6 months, 2 years, that's me, and my older sister 3. And the Lord said to her, I can take better care of them in Africa in my will than I can in America out of my will. And that happened.
Really?
Yes.
That's amazing.
That is a wonderful story. But she had to go through that, see,
Yeah.
and prepare herself. The Lord prepared her.
That's the thing, you know, it's like, whatever you want to do in life, you know, if you follow God's word, you do what the Lord tells you to do, and the Lord will speak to you through His Holy Spirit. As long as you learn how to receive the Holy
That's
Spirit.
right.
But you have to do that in the Word. So you have to, like I've said a million times, you have to read the Word and understand and know what it's about and garner the wisdom that comes out of the Word. You know, like all the years that Jonathan spent with all of the experiences, all the influence, all the other things, developed him to the point where he was able to go to where the Lord wanted him to go and do what the Lord wanted him to do and be a success at it. And so if you don't do that, you're going to be a sorrowful failure, you know, and it doesn't matter what you do. But anyway, it wasn't my calling to be in the ministry, okay? When I went to El Salvador on one missions trip one time, and I was down there, and I was trying to figure out, I owned a medical equipment company at the time, and I had a lot of things going on over here, and I was trying to figure out in my own mind how that I could be an assistance or help to these people, or anywhere, in medical missions or whatever. The Lord just told me, I was sitting in the bus, in San Salvador. And the Lord just told me that my calling was to provide the money, for these people so I could come back to the United States, make the money, and then send the money, to these people, because these are the people that are called to do what they do down here. Not me particularly, but, I can certainly make the money to send to them to keep them going. And so that's what I did. And so it turned out real well too. So the whole gist of this whole story is, if you want to be God's disciple, first of all, you got to listen to what He's telling you, and you got to learn how to listen to what He's telling you.
Absolutely.
That's what the Word is about. So that's where you get most of that wisdom, is in the Word. We have enjoyed John being with us today.
Thank you for
And I know you've enjoyed it.
invitation.
And so it's kind of odd having people sitting right here watching you.
Yeah.
I can handle a million of people or whatever.
That's true.
Not that many.
I'm
but-
sure that's hard.
Yeah. Anyway, we will call it a day for the day, and please leave a comment below, because we'd love to hear from you, our subscribers. And we have certainly enjoyed Jonathan being with us today, and we have actually learned a lot today from him, and we hope you have too. So with that, we will say goodbye and see you next Sunday. Bye now.